Welcome to Empowered by Iron, the podcast for female strength athletes by female strength athletes. We are your hosts, Kristin Lander from Fiercely Fueled Nutrition Coaching and Mary Morton from Silver Linings Podcast Productions. Together, we are Empowered by Iron. Hey everyone! So welcome to Empowered by Iron, the podcast for female strength athletes by female strength athletes. If you guys don't know, Kristin, our resident nutrition expert, our co-host, and our fearless leader, has made some pretty amazing discoveries in terms of the world of hormones and female strength. What world? The world of hormones and female strength athletes? Yeah, that's the word. Athletes. We're athletes. And she wanted to talk to us about this today. But a little kind of backstory on this, I guess, from my perspective, and then I'll let Kristin take over. So when I first met Kristin, we mostly talked about nutrition, and she was cutting, and she was going to Worlds, right? No,
Masters Pan Ams,
and she was working really hard, and then she kind of got hit with the surgeries that happened, and she took some time off because of the surgeries, and then another surgery, and an injury, and like all this stuff that happened, and she started getting back into training, and all this research that she had done about this thing started coming to life, which I hope I'm like giving you guys teasers and making you listen up a little bit better. It started coming to life and actually applying to her, and it made her open her eyes, would you say, to what this is. And she kind of almost felt like an asshole because she discredited what this is for a while until it happened to her. Yeah. So if you start listening to this and you're like, yeah, no, that's not a thing. Just listen and be open-minded because it happened to one of us.
Yeah.
So take it away, Kristin.
Well, okay, so like Mary said, we're going to talk all about hormones, and this has become something that this is starting to get a little bit of traction in female strength sports because due to a variety of factors, whether it's diet or overtraining or under recovery, women are starting to get, and I think we just have a lot more women in strength sports now, and women are starting to notice that they're having hormone imbalances, and it's becoming a huge issue, and it's something that I've been studying for years, and like Mary said, things started happening to me, and finally, I don't like to say that everything happens for a reason, but I definitely learn from things that happen, and I learned it was a final piece of the puzzle. So we'll get into that. But first I want to take you through a common scenario. So see if this sounds like you. You know something isn't right. You're tired. Actually, you're super exhausted. Your training sessions are getting harder and harder to get through, and you can't function without coffee in the morning. And definitely can't train without a pre-workout supplement loaded with caffeine. And you have zero energy for social events and would rather just spend your evenings and weekends after training just curled up in the couch on your favorite sweatpants.
Like, that's not just because you're an introvert. Like, right. You literally don't have the energy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Literally don't have the energy.
All right. Yep. Check box for Mary.
Yeah. And despite your best efforts at maintaining your weight, or even if you're trying to lose a couple of pounds, you either end up like binging like crazy on the weekends, and not because you're just out having fun at a restaurant, because you're like, food, I want more food. Or even if you just stick to your plan perfectly, you're just noticing that you're not really making any progress in terms of whether you were trying to gain weight or lose weight or just maintain whatever your goal was. You're not making any traction. Mm-hmm. So, this is something that's really common, and what I'm describing are symptoms of a hormone imbalance. A lot of times that's brushed off as overtraining or under recovery, and
or a combination of both,
or you just think that you're under a lot of stress.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you're like, golly, I'm like so tired lately. And when it becomes like this fatigue that you can't shake, like
just chronic fatigue.
Yeah, you're just like always tired all the time. Those are actually symptoms of a hormone imbalance in a strength athlete. And as a female strength athlete, there aren't a lot of resources out there for us to detect and to treat these hormone imbalances that come up as a result of heavy training and dieting. And even if you haven't dieted a lot in the past, just heavy training alone can cause hormone imbalances, which is something that is completely overlooked. No one really looks at how intense training can affect your hormones, and it kind of flies under the radar, and most medical professionals are unaware of it. And I think that is something that happens to a lot of us as female strength athletes, is our doctors are a little not entirely sure.
They don't really understand, like, what does that mean? Like, do you just go into the gym and do some jazzercise?
Yeah, because didn't your doctor tell you? Oh, God.
So there's even something better than before. So everyone knows I'm a vegan. Hi, I'm a vegan. So I decided to get blood work done just because of my last checkup. And everything was totally fine. Like, my doctor was a little worried about, like, my iron being low, but that was totally fine. Everything was great, except my healthy cholesterol was a little bit low. Now, in a vegan diet, you do have to be very conscious about how much fat you intake. Like, healthy peanut butter, avocados, coconut oil, like the good fats.
Yeah. How
much you intake. So what she told me to do, she was like, oh, you just need to exercise more. And I was like, excuse me?
Because, okay, so your HDLs were low.
Yes.
So she says, exercise more.
I was like,
and you're like,
20 hours a week? Is that not enough? Like, what do you want me to do? Go run a marathon? Is that exercise? Like, most health professionals don't get it. Now, there's a lot, I feel, that are coming up, especially that have had a hand in athleticism, who are trying to look into this, but as a majority, we get what I just described. People like, oh, just exercise more. I'm like, bitch!
I can't. I physically can't.
What?
I'm already curled up in my sweatpants on the couch. I can't do anymore. And this happens. A lot of times, the symptoms that I was describing, a lot of times people will go to their doctor and say, like, I'm really tired. I'm having trouble losing weight. These things are happening, and if you have a really astute doctor, they might go, oh, kind of sounds like you have a low functioning thyroid.
Yeah.
But then 9 times out of 10, the thyroid test will come back normal, and they just kind of like look at you and they're like, okay, well, you look really strong and you look really healthy. Like,
you're lying.
What? And they just say, well, maybe take some time off from the gym. They can't really offer you how to continue as an athlete.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Take some time off of what?
Right. They get a little bit,
it's a little bit out of their comfort zone.
I think they're just a little out of touch with how to deal with female strength athletes.
Because I think most people, you say, will stop exercising for a while, and they're like, all right, doctor's orders, no more Gold's Gym for me. And then you have us, and we're like, but what else do I do?
Right. Yeah. So this is why I've spent years researching this stuff. I have suspected for a lot of years that there was a link between heavy training and hormone imbalances, even in the face of a really healthy diet. And I'm not talking about a healthy diet as in a diet where you're trying to lose weight. I'm talking about truly a healthy diet.
Yeah.
And I finally figured it out. It took watching a few of my nutrition clients go through some issues, and I knew their diet was not the issue. I knew it couldn't be, not just because I was the one helping them, but because I knew what to look out for. I knew what they were eating. I know the warning signs of under eating, and not eating in the right ratios for your activity level. And then it happened to me.
Da-da-da.
Yeah. For those that don't know, I had to undergo 2 major, I'm not talking like knee surgeries, but 2 major surgeries in the span of 3 months. And the physical and chemical stress that put on my body, combined with all the years of heavy training, a drive to get back in the gym as soon as possible, and then also just being a business owner for, I don't even know how many years. Many years, a lot of years, high stress job, basically.
So like your normal stress level, and then you add surgery on top of it.
Basically.
And recovery.
Yep. And it led me into the exact same scenario that my clients had experienced. And it was incredibly shocking. And I just didn't believe that this could happen to me, because I know all the warning signs, and I'm careful of this kind of stuff. I pay attention to my body. I listen to my body. But I'm really thankful that it did happen, because it seriously was the last, like the final piece of the puzzle that I've been trying to put together for years. And so now I'm able to bring this information to you guys and help other female strength athletes experiencing what I believe is an epidemic in our sports, and can help people get their lives back and become stronger and more competitive than ever. So I'll just say that one thing that I think, this is not a knock on anyone, but I think unfortunately many nutrition coaches and strength coaches unintentionally lead their female athletes into hormone imbalance, because it's just not something that they're taught about. Right. So if you are experiencing any of the symptoms that we're going to get into and having any of these troubles, have a talk with your coach, whoever you're working with, your strength coach or your nutrition coach, because it's something that they could become educated in as well.
Be the driver of of the conversation. Like, right. We've talked about on this podcast before about how, yes, you are your coach's athlete, but your coach is also your coach. You're paying them to help you get better. And if something that they are doing, they are programming for you that isn't helping, whether that be actual programming or your nutrition, and you feel like it's causing you hindrance, you feel like this may apply to you, and you approach them and they become defensive about it. We've talked about this. Go find a new coach. That's not okay. Yeah. And Kristin and I had been talking about this as we were leading up to this episode. One thing that I think is becoming more and more apparent is the emergence of some of these more female-focused issues in what has been primarily a male-dominant sport. And that's not a knock on men. Like, they just don't know. Yeah. You know, it's been a male-dominant sport. Males and females are very different in terms of hormones, strength, nutrition, what they need, what they don't need. And so for a male who's been coaching males, let's say predominantly for 10 years, and then gets a female athlete, he's not going to think to take a step back and go, oh, this might be different. He sees another body, another person.
We aren't tiny. We aren't small men.
No. We're
different.
We're very different, and it's becoming more apparent. And I feel the very good coaches are starting to educate themselves on that. Now it is that time of year where we have all these coaches coming out that are brand new and want to help you, and just be wary of that. Look, if you don't have the money to invest in a very good nutrition coach or a very good strength coach, there are some great programs out there that have been put together by those people. Exactly.
Yep.
Don't waste your money. Don't spend your money on a coach who is cheap, but it's going to cost you your health.
Right.
Anyway, that was my sidebar. We'll go back on track. I'm sorry.
Well, so I'm going to teach you guys how to start to detect if you have a hormone imbalance, and then we're going to talk about how to find someone to help you with that. So first, we have to talk about what a hormone is and what a hormone does. So hormones are chemical substances in all animals. They're often referred to as chemical messengers because they carry information and instructions from one group of cells to another. So in the human body, hormones influence almost every cell, organ, and function.
I would like to say that there are more hormones in your body than just testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind. Like, there's a lot of hormones. And I realize you're going to say that, but...
our bodies produce and secrete over 50 hormones. So there's tons of hormones. And they regulate our growth, development, metabolism, tissue function, sexual function, reproduction, the way our bodies use food, and the reaction of our bodies to emergencies, and even our moods. So they control basically everything in our body. Right. They're the messengers that tell our tissues and our brain and everything how to respond. Work. Yep. But the main hormones that we're going to be looking at today are the sex hormones, and then one other, which are progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, and cortisol. So,
kind of the main ones you hear in the fitness industry. The main strength
yeah, because those are the ones that are sensitive to training and and dieting, which is chronic dieting is also a really big issue in our sport.
Yes,
we'll get into some of that. But all right, so let's talk about where hormones come from.
Where
They're synthesized in your body.
Why? No, just kidding.
So the ones that I just mentioned, those 4, they are made from cholesterol, which people don't know. Cholesterol is a precursor for sex hormones, which is why we need cholesterol in our bodies. Every cell in your body produces cholesterol. Your liver alone makes 75% of the cholesterol in your body. So even if you have a low cholesterol diet, your liver makes 75%. It's an integral part of our cell membranes. All right, so I'm going to give you guys a brief overview of what these 4 hormones do, and then we're going to start piecing the whole puzzle together. The first one we're going to talk about is progesterone. So progesterone is a hormone that's made in the ovaries and the adrenal glands. It's responsible for regulating your menstrual cycle, getting your uterus ready for pregnancy, and then maintaining that pregnancy. And it also counteracts some of the effects of estrogen. And I know a lot of women think that it's awesome if they stop getting a period, but it's not. Because maintaining menstrual cycles which is the function of progesterone, is important during childbearing years, because unopposed estrogen without progesterone increases your risk of endometrial cancer, which is not good.
Now, if you're on birth control and your doctor has prescribed you continuous birth control and you don't have a period, that's different.
That's a whole different thing.
That's me. I take continuous. I don't think I've had a period since June. I'm now I'm letting my body go through a cycle, which is the worst fucking thing. And I don't know how you guys do it every fucking month, but we just gotta make sure it works once in a while, right? That's my theory.
Yeah. Okay, so progesterone, symptoms of low progesterone are headaches, mood changes, including anxiety or depression, a low sex drive, hot flashes, and irregularity in your menstrual cycle, which could be either that your menstrual cycle is shortening, like the full cycle. I'm not talking about the actual period part, but the full cycle. Your cycle is shortening or getting longer, or there's sometimes it's 28 days and sometimes it's 35 days. And so it's all over the board, or it just stops altogether. Woo! Right. So those are some symptoms of low progesterone. Estrogen is the next one we're going to talk about, which is actually a common name for 3 different hormones, which for our purposes today, we do not need to distinguish between them. We're just going to lump them all together and call it estrogen. It's responsible for the growth and development of female sex characteristics and reproduction, basically. Pretty simple hormone. Everyone knows a lot about it, but it's produced in the ovaries and also the adrenal glands, just like progesterone, but it's also produced in our fat tissue, which a lot of people don't know.
Like your boobs?
Like your boobs.
Fair.
But also just adipose tissue. So
I just immediately thought of boobs.
I mean, my boobs don't, because
well, your boobs are a special kind of boobs now.
But this is something this is one reason that we can get into hormone imbalances when people have really low body fat.
Because they can't produce any. Or
they're fat. Yeah, there's less places for them to produce estrogen.
Hot damn.
So in women, estrogen circulates in the bloodstream. It binds to estrogen receptor cells in targeted tissues, and it affects all sorts of things. So breast, uterus, brain, bone, liver, heart, and some other tissues. So it's a super important hormone.
You want to know a fun fact?
Yeah.
So it's related to estrogen and testosterone, but in androgynous people, so people who don't necessarily have a sex, they're an XXY, which means they have 2 female chromosomes and a male chromosome. During first puberty, which happens in utero when the baby's developing, basically they have receptors because they're supposed to be born a male, right? Because they have an X chromosome, even though they have 2 X's.
Yeah.
The testosterone can't actually bind this damaged receptor. So the baby's born as a female. So, it's a female, not a problem. Until your second puberty hits at age, 14 to 16 or whatever. Then that receptor is not actually damaged because it's a different type of receptor. So testosterone then can bind, and then all of a sudden you get converted into a male.
Male.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is crazy, but that's like tells you the power of hormones. Like,
yes.
Second puberty, boom, boy. Oh, shit.
Right. Right. So,
now that we're back, a little science fun for you.
We nerding out a little bit. Sorry, guys. So declining or low levels of estrogen can cause physical symptoms, which include hot flashes, night sweats, and vaginal dryness. Yeah. So basically, we're talking some symptoms of menopause. That's if you start experiencing things like that and you're in your 30s, watch out, because that's points to a hormone imbalance. I say 30s or 20s, but right. Okay, so symptoms of excessive estrogen are the same as symptoms of low progesterone, because we talked about how the progesterone counteracts some of the effects of estrogen. So this is why hormone testing is really important. You can't always go off of symptoms alone. Mm-hmm. You've got to do some sort of testing so you know exactly what you're dealing with, because you may deal with them in different ways.
But we'll get into that later, right?
Yep. Okay. Okay, so on to testosterone. Women do produce testosterone, just not near as much as men. And it's produced in our ovaries and our adrenal glands. And it serves many vital functions. Testosterone is actually really important for women, because we need it for bone strength and development of lean muscle mass and strength. And it also contributes to an overall sense of well-being and energy levels. And it plays a super important role in a woman's sex drive. All right, moving along. Last one we're going to talk about is cortisol. Cortisol is referred to as the stress hormone. It's produced within the adrenal gland. It's released in response to stress and low blood sugar. So basically, it helps control blood sugar levels, it regulates metabolism, it helps reduce inflammation, and it assists with memory. So it has a controlling effect on the salt and water balance in our bodies too. So it helps control your blood pressure. And then what's really important for us as athletes is that it's a super strong anti-inflammatory. If you've ever been prescribed prednisone, that's basically a corticosteroid, so cortisol.
What's prednisone? Is that like an oral?
It's an oral steroid that they give for all sorts of different, like illnesses and diseases, and just widespread inflammation. I think they sometimes give it for rheumatoid arthritis. It has a lot. Anyway,
it's very common.
It's very common, and it's often prescribed as a way to bring down inflammation in the body. So cortisol, the cortisol that our body produces, is a super strong anti-inflammatory. Your circulating levels of cortisol are a key factor in controlling the level of inflammatory reactions in your body. So for us, it's really important to have cortisol circulating through our body. And the harder your adrenal glands have to work, so I was talking about cortisol is produced in your adrenal glands, so the harder they have to work, which is under stress, they produce stress hormones, the more fatigued they become and the less cortisol they produce. So that kind of leads us into the root of the problem that I've seen, is that even if you have a doctor who is really good and you go and say, I have X, Y, and Z happening, and they may look at your hormones as a potential source of problem, which I think is actually somewhat rare. A lot of times they don't.
I've never been asked for a hormone test. I've been asked to do a thyroid test, blood test, urine test, but I've never had to do a hormone test.
A hormone test.
Yeah.
Yep. Because a lot of times they just assume like, oh, you're fine. Your hormones are fine unless you're around the age of starting menopause. Right. Then they might go, oh, okay. But even then, a lot of times they don't do hormone tests. And there's a really good reason for that I'm going to get into, that they don't do it. Oh. So anyway, even if your doctor does happen to look at your hormones, they tend to look at them individually. And they don't go to what I believe is the source of the problem. So, if you noticed, every one of the hormones I mentioned, if you remember back to what I said, it gets produced at least in part by the adrenal glands. So the adrenal glands can become fatigued due to the stress of training and other life stressors. But really, it's the heavy training that sets us up for something called adrenal fatigue. This is a condition that most medical doctors are not trained in. There have been a lot of experts out there that have completely said, like, this does not exist. Adrenal fatigue is not a thing. And I think it's done a really big disservice to particularly women that are experiencing some of these problems. I was one of those people that was like, I'm not really sure if this exists. I don't know. And then it happened to me. Like, literally got hormone testing, saw it on paper. Fuck. Okay. There are some medical doctors that practice what's called functional medicine, and they do diagnose and treat adrenal fatigue. Some naturopaths and chiropractors are also able to treat and diagnose adrenal fatigue. But the thing that most medical doctors will look at, if you talk to them about like low functioning adrenal glands, is actually a disease called Addison's disease, which is life-threatening because the adrenal glands have shut down and are no longer producing any cortisol. So these people have to be on steroids, like corticosteroids for life, basically. Oh, wow. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about Addison's disease. We are talking about adrenal fatigue. But as more women get involved in competitive sports, I really hope that medical schools begin to teach and recognize about adrenal fatigue because it's a serious issue.
Well, that and nutrition.
Right.
The two things.
And they're like, kind of tied together, if you're noticing.
They're very tied together. Yeah. I mean, all the shit's tied together.
Right. Okay, so let's look at, I want to give you guys the definition on adrenal fatigue that was written by the guy who wrote the book on adrenal fatigue. His name is Dr. James Wilson. He's a naturopath, a chiropractor, and a PhD. And he writes, adrenal fatigue is any decrease, but not failure, in the ability of the adrenal glands to carry out their normal functions. The chief symptom of adrenal fatigue is fatigue, but is also accompanied by many other signs and symptoms. Adrenal fatigue occurs when stress from any source, physical, emotional, mental, or environmental, exceeds, either cumulatively or in intensity, the body's capacity to adjust appropriately to the demands placed upon it by stress. When this happens, the adrenals become fatigued and are unable to continue responding adequately to further stress. Boom. There it is. So let's talk about some of the symptoms because these are really interesting. And I remember when we read through these together, you were like, what? Do I have this? Right?
Oh yeah, no. I'm slightly convinced I might.
So, all right. And you do not have to have all of these symptoms. A combination of some of them can mean that you may have some adrenal fatigue and is worth looking at. So, difficulty getting up in the morning.
True.
Yeah. Despite getting a good night's sleep, you still feel tired when you wake up and you just don't really feel like you've woken up until about 10 a.m. A lot of times you'll hit an afternoon low around 3 or 4, and then you'll feel better around 6 or after dinner time and feel pretty good for the rest of the night till about 9 and then kind of crash again. And if you stay up late enough, you may get a second wind at about 11 and you could actually be really productive from like 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. So that is kind of one of the hallmark symptoms of adrenal fatigue, but also craving salty foods, having a lack of energy. Basically, everything seems like a chore, even the things that you used to enjoy. You have an increased effort to do everyday tasks. Everything seems to require 10 times as much energy as it should. You have a decreased sex drive, decreased ability to handle stress, and little things that never used to bother you start to get to you. You're irritable, you have constant anxiety, yelling at your kids or your partner, compulsive eating. Yeah. Increased time to recover from illness or injury, feeling lightheaded when you stand up quickly, mild depression, less enjoyment or happiness with life, not much seems to interest you anymore. Work and relationships feel empty and you almost never do anything just for fun. Increased PMS symptoms. And then all of your symptoms above that I described get worse if you skip a meal. So this is basically being hangry, but probably hangry plus, a little beyond hangry. But if you're noticing that you're getting hangry like often, you might have something going on with your hormones. Also, a couple more are that thoughts are less focused and more fuzzy. You often lose track of your train of thought. It's harder and harder to make decisions, even about little things. You're starting to notice memory problems, and you have decreased productivity, and it takes you longer to complete tasks, and it's harder to stay on task. So those are the symptoms. They're kind of broad. They're a little bit vague, but
basically it seems like if you feel something's off.
Right.
And you happen to match some of these symptoms.
Right.
Think about it.
The other thing I didn't mention was one of the symptoms is frequent upper respiratory infections.
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
Right. And do you remember before I figured out that this is what was going on with me, I was so tired. I remember I would I can't come to the gym today. Not just oh, I don't feel like it. I physically struggled to get up and go put my dishes in the dishwasher. I am fucking tired. I cannot come. And then I was having trouble pushing through my workouts.
Yeah.
If you remember that, I just couldn't.
Wanted to quit and throw it all in and do powerlifting, and then you're like, nah, maybe I don't need to do any of this. Maybe I'll just quit completely. And I was like, what the fuck, Kristin?
Well, and even I would be doing, training, and I'm one of the things that I'm really good at doing is if I get tired, I can push through and I can finish. I can finish I'm almost to my working sets, or whatever. I'm almost done with, I do a lot of style training where I'll do complexes and I work up to a max for that day on that complex. And I'll be all right, I'm just going to try it with 2 more kilos. And all of a sudden everything fell apart. I couldn't push through anything. And that not being able to push was something new for me. And I knew something was wrong because I've always been able to I can do this for 1 more rep. I can always do 1 more rep. And I literally could not do 1 more rep. And then I would lay on the floor after training I was dead. It was bad. I'm talking something's wrong.
Yeah.
And the causes of adrenal fatigue are usually a combination of illness or disease, physical stress, so surgery, poor nutrition, injury, frequent hard training sessions, emotional stress, that could be relationships, work, mental illness, and environmental or chemical stress, so medications, anesthesia, pollutants in our air. All of those things can kind of together create some problems. Probably one of them individually probably won't. Especially, it can. Right. You could have one single event that could push you into adrenal fatigue. But I think that as athletes, that if we're the type of person that's going to happen to, that would have already happened really early on in our career, the first injury you had. Yeah. So I think we tend to be really resilient, but it's the cumulative effect of all of these things.
Well, and I think you also have to keep in mind, your life isn't broken up into pieces. You aren't training once a day and then that's in a bubble, and then going to work and that's in a different bubble, and then family life and that's in a different bubble, and they don't intersect. They may never physically intersect, but they do. You are a part of all those things. You have to deal with work. You have to deal with training. You have to deal with family and all the stressors and everything that comes with that. So your life is multifaceted. And you have to remember that you're especially if you're Kristin and I, which you are, because you're a badass female listening to this podcast. You are resilient in your training, and you'd probably be just like Kristin and be I'm fine. What the fuck is wrong with me? I can do this. Why am I being such a baby about this? I need to do this. And try to push through it. But as she said, it's one of those things where you're all right, what's up?
I literally started to think well, fuck. I mean, I guess I'm done.
We did talk about that.
I was maybe I'm just not good. I don't think I can train anymore.
We had this conversation, you remember? And it was back and forth. And it got to the point where I was I don't know if Kristin's going to give up this week, or if next week she's going to be fine. I kept coming into training Are you okay?
It was so
like
weird.
Trying to gauge where you were at. I mean, I have no idea what's going on because I am not a trained doctor. I can give you a molecular breakdown of things, but I'm not a doctor.
Right.
But I play one on TV. Can I have your number?
So, yeah, there's not a lot of research out there on adrenal fatigue and female strength athletes. And here's the crazy thing is that when you research hormone imbalances in the female athlete, you're going to find everyone talking about the female athlete triad, which is menstrual dysfunction, low energy availability, and decreased bone density, which is usually talked about in endurance athletes and athletes with eating disorders. And I just don't think this fits the bill for us. That does not describe really, I think, what's happening with female strength athletes. Experts typically will point to a caloric deficit as a culprit, but honestly, I respectfully and professionally disagree with that, at least for the population of women that I work with, which is strength athletes. I think that a lot of these symptoms are underlying adrenal fatigue.
Basically, you're calling bullshit.
Well,
professional.
It's bullshit. Just that it's that all the research out there is for endurance athletes. It's endurance athletes that tend to have the female athlete triad. Yeah. And it's like the female strength athlete's kind of a new breed, right? Like we're a new breed of women. And this is something that I see happening and no one knowing what to do about it. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said earlier, it pisses me off when someone who's like really well respected in the field, a man, says adrenal fatigue doesn't exist. You're just lazy. Fuck that. I am not fucking lazy. I am not lazy. And I know other women that are not, they're experiencing this and they're like, what is wrong with me? Like,
well, and we could have a whole conversation about this, about how things like that, when it turns around on a woman, it's like, well, what's wrong with me? What am I doing?
Like, why am I weak?
Why am I the problem? And like, this is an instance of many instances where it's like, no, you are not the problem. Literally, you could do nothing about this. Right. Your body is just like, hey, time out. Right. Let's fix this. But it's not because you're weak. It's not because you're being a little bitch. It's not because, as they like to say, you're being a pussy, which I hate that word. It's so stupid.
Right, because it's like, having a pussy's bad.
Is that bad? Is that a negative connotation? Do you want to get into this? You want me to beat you up? I won't. I won't beat anyone up.
You might.
But what I'm saying is, like we said before, with the male-dominated industry, and like I said, I'm not trying to knock all male coaches. Some of them, yes, suck.
I have a male coach who is amazing.
Oh, yeah, Sean's amazing.
He's amazing.
And there are great male coaches, especially ones that will listen. But there are the assholes that are like, well, you're just not good enough. But the minute they have a problem, it's like, well, I was diagnosed with this, and I think I have this, and I'm broken. And you're like, God damn, you little bitch.
Right. Right. Well, okay, so now that I've convinced you that your adrenal glands might be in danger. I haven't? Okay. Oh. All right. Fine. Mary's not convinced, but you guys might be like listening. You might be listening. I know, and I'm the expert. It's fine. No, you might be listening going, holy shit, she's like describing me. So this podcast is for you. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what your adrenal glands are. Because no one wants to have, something wrong with part of their body that they don't even know what it is. So the adrenal glands are a small pyramid-shaped organ that sits on top of each kidney. And the role of the adrenal gland is to produce hormones. Imagine that. Specifically, it produces the hormones that regulate fight or flight response, tissue repair and anti-aging, blood sugar, immune response, central nervous system stimulation, stress reaction normalization, regulation of sodium, potassium, and fluid volume, as well as produce a portion of the sex hormones, like we talked about earlier. They do a lot of things. Your adrenal glands are really important.
Really?
So
I don't think that's real. Do they even exist?
No, they don't exist. They're not there. This is like a unicorn. It's made up. Okay.
Unicorns aren't real?
I mean, evil unicorns are.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So with adrenal fatigue, the sex hormone levels are often decreased because the adrenal glands are too taxed to manufacture adequate levels of the hormones. So I want to be really clear about this because I know I'm repeating myself, But what I'm saying is, as a female strength athlete, we are prone to hormone imbalances, specifically imbalances in the sex hormones. This is generally, not always, but generally due to our adrenal glands being too fucking tired from everything we expect of our body to produce adequate level of hormones. So, like I said, I've been researching this link for years. My research has led me to believe that adrenal fatigue is a huge issue for female strength athletes, and I'll tell you why. One, intense exercise can lower progesterone. That in and of itself can cause irregular periods or missed periods. Two, intense exercise puts a huge amount of stress on your body. This causes your adrenal glands to release more cortisol. And then balancing everyday life on top of training is stressful. If you add on an injury, surgery, relationship, or work stress, you have a recipe for adrenal burnout or adrenal fatigue. So what this means is that your body's been producing cortisol at such a high rate for long enough that it simply can't continue, and it stops producing adequate amounts of cortisol. And one of the things I want to mention is that a lot of times, people that do realize that there's a link between female athletes and hormone problems, they always point to a caloric deficit or low body fat for bringing on these hormonal changes. That could definitely happen. That absolutely can happen.
I don't have low body fat.
But this is the case for like chronic dieters and people that are following low fat diets. Yeah. If you recall in the nutrition episode that we did, Eating for Health and Gains, I talked about how women need 30% of their calories to come from fat. This is why. Remember, we talked about these hormones are made from cholesterol. So that's, if you're following a diet that's consisting of 20% or less and are experiencing hormone troubles, your problems might be more diet related and maybe not so much adrenal gland, but it can go on long enough that then your adrenal glands start to suffer.
Yeah.
So what I'm recognizing is it's not just diet, but changes to your diet can help resolve some of these issues. That's how you solve some of this, is changing up your diet a little bit. But it's the cumulative stress on the body that initiates these hormone imbalances, and that's what leads to missed periods and all these other issues. So here's the piece that as a nutrition coach and an athlete really terrifies me. When cortisol is low, which is the case in adrenal fatigue, remember we talked about you like produce so much cortisol that now your adrenal glands are like, I'm not putting out that much anymore. You don't make good use of it. So your liver has a more difficult time converting glycogen, which is stored sugar, into glucose, which is the usable sugar for energy. So on top of that, as if that wasn't bad enough, the food that you eat, so fat, protein, and carbohydrates, which are normally converted to glucose so that we can use them for energy, cannot be converted. So this means that when your body is demanding energy, there's no energy there for it to use. It can't do the work. Your body cannot convert the stored energy source into usable energy. So that leads to low blood sugar, clouded thinking, and decreased muscle strength.
And fatigue, right?
And fatigue, yeah. It's like you didn't eat. Yeah, and despite the fact that you've eaten your pre-workout meal, your body is unable to meet its energy needs during training and throughout the day because the hormone you need to convert your food is not in ample supply. This is insane to me. We focus on getting our nutrition spot on to fuel our training and our goals. And if your adrenal glands are taxed, your body cannot adequately use that food for fuel. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy.
It's nuts.
Yeah. It's like, and this is so crazy because when I was going through this, it was like, I was like, do I just need to eat more food? And I was trying to just maintain where I was at in terms of my body weight. And I was like, I'm having to suddenly eat so much more food just to try to feel okay that now my body weight started going up. And I was like, what the fuck? Like this was plenty food for me before. I weigh the same. I'm training the same. Like nothing, what has changed? This should be plenty food. And it wasn't, yet I was gaining weight. It was insane. And this is why. So, We're going to talk about how to find someone to help you if you feel like you're suffering from hormone imbalance in a minute. But first I want to mention something because we haven't talked about the thyroid at all. And I would guess that that's probably a surprise to a lot of people. If you are having some weird symptoms, a lot of times people will research their symptoms and go, I think I have a low functioning thyroid, just like we talked about in the beginning, like your doctor might think. Here's a connection between thyroid and many hormone imbalances. 80% of those suffering from adrenal fatigue also have a lot of symptoms of low thyroid. For female strength athletes, I believe much of this is due to the fact that low progesterone, which is caused by adrenal fatigue, blocks the action of thyroid hormones, and that leads to hypothyroid symptoms. So let me say that again. Your taxed adrenal glands are not producing enough progesterone. When progesterone is low, the actions of the thyroid hormones are blocked. They can't do what they're supposed to do. And that's what leads to hypothyroid symptoms. This is why your thyroid tests will come back okay. The hormones are there and circulating, but they're not allowed to work effectively. So, in order to fix these issues and recover, we have to get an accurate diagnosis, and that's performed through hormone testing. Mm-hmm. So, we're gonna put some links in the show notes to so that you can help find someone that can do the appropriate form of testing, because these hormones need to be looked at all together, not just individually. And I really like saliva testing for this because blood testing, which is the common way that your medical doctor is going to test for hormone imbalances, it only measures the amount of hormones that are circulating, not what's inside of the cells. It's what's inside of the cells that matters. Yeah. So also urine, sometimes they'll do some urine tests, and that only measures the spillover. So saliva testing is where it's at, because saliva, you're actually getting a cell to test, and you can test the hormones within that cell. Mm-hmm. So
when you did this, what did you find? So you had this idea, you went to the doctor, and you got hormone testing. What did your results look like?
My progesterone was low. Mm-hmm. My estrogen was borderline low, which was to be expected because I had a bilateral mastectomy. So I removed some of the ways for my body to make estrogen. So we'll see. That may bounce back up. I'm not sure. And then my cortisol was really low. Like, not non-existent because that's a medical emergency, but really very low. Very low.
How was your testosterone?
My testosterone was normal. Testosterone was normal.
So it wasn't that affected.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Do you think that athletes who are suffering some of these issues because testosterone's not really affected, how do you think that might affect like a test?
Say that again.
Steroid test. Like a drug test.
You're talking about drug tests.
Yeah, because if you're going through this, and let's say you happen to be naturally producing more testosterone as a female, but because your ratios are different.
Like, you're wondering if I'm going to fail a drug test.
That's
because my estrogen is low and my testosterone is normal.
Yeah.
No, because the drug tests that, the thing that they test for is the, testosterone to, I can't remember what it's called. It's a T to E, but it's not testosterone to estrogen.
It's progesterone, isn't it?
No. I'm going to have to look this up. What they're testing for is they're testing for the precursors to testosterone.
Oh, yeah.
So the way that people
Epitestosterone.
Epitestosterone. Thank you. See, I knew it started with an E. Yeah, it's testosterone to epitestosterone. So there's a few chemical reactions that occur in the body in order to get to testosterone. Okay. And so the way that people get popped for drugs if they are taking exogenous testosterone
is
they don't have enough epitestosterone, because you can't make that up. Epitestosterone is the precursor to testosterone, basically. Yeah. So when you are just naturally have a higher level of testosterone, it's fine because my epitestosterone will be high as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which mine wasn't high; it was normal, but higher than my estrogen.
Right. So T to E ratio is not testosterone to estrogen.
No, it's testosterone to epitestosterone. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So if you see someone who gets, if you happen to be like reading who gets popped for what.
Which seems to be a lot of people nowadays.
It does. It does. It's a little bit of a problem. But
it is a little bit of a... I think I don't think that the drug scene has increased. I mean, this is a total sidebar, and this will be the last thing I say about it. I don't think the drug scene has increased. I think the testing has gotten better.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I think people who have been taking drugs finally have gotten caught. Or... caught makes it sound like a bad thing, but like... Well,
it is a bad thing if you're competing in a drugged league. I mean, a drug-free league.
Yeah. But, okay, so that's sidebar. So if any of you were wondering about testosterone and epitestosterone, there you have it.
Yeah.
So, I know that we've talked about this in terms of, like, what people could do, and so we'll link some of that in the description.
Yeah.
But you, being a proactive nutrition coach, you are starting to do something different with your nutrition company to help specifically female strength athletes. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so basically I'm now, as part of Fiercely Fueled Nutrition, I'm offering hormone testing as part of my nutrition coaching. So it's just, you want to work with me as a nutrition coach? Great. Then if you want to add in hormone testing, then I have a lab that I can do hormone testing through. I told you it's saliva that I like to test. So I just send you a test kit, you spit in a couple tubes and send it in, and we get the results, and then we can start making, because here's the thing, is that you don't need drugs necessarily to fix this stuff. If you do, we'll refer you to someone because I don't do drugs. I mean, I don't prescribe drugs. I don't prescribe drugs. I don't do drugs either, but sure. That's just not my scope of practice. But diet, we can make some really impactful diet changes. So recovery is totally possible if you are making really targeted changes for your specific hormone profile. You can begin to see improvement in a week to 3 weeks. And then depending upon the severity of it, you might be able to completely recover in 3 months. If things are really severe, maybe a year, or if you just have a lot of stress in your life that we can't get rid of, it might take a little bit more time. But honestly, for me, I've made really simple but very impactful changes to my diet and training. I feel 100 times better. I'm training just a little less. I am eating more. I'm getting stronger, and I'm leaning out without even trying to. And it's crazy how knowing what is wrong with you allows you to make really targeted and powerful changes. And so
simple.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah, really simple. But you need someone who knows what to do. And you need to have specifics in terms of what you're looking at, because I went to my regular medical doctor and they said I was fine, other than my white blood cell count was just a little bit low. And other than that, I was fine. But I wasn't fine.
No.
So, but now that I know what's wrong and I'm able to oh, okay, we have this, and this, we can make a handful of changes and like I said, to diet, training, some lifestyle, sort it all out and get you feeling better. So yeah, if you want to work with me to have me help you figure out your hormone issues, shoot me an email or go to fiercelyfueled.com. My email is fiercelyfueled@gmail.com. And I would love to work with you. I have a lot of clients right now. I'm really busy right now, but this is something I'm really, really passionate about. And if you need help and want help, I would love to work with you, because I think that I'm seeing this is such a huge problem for female strength athletes. And I don't know really of many other people that are looking at this component and really helping women figure this out. So, I just want to see everyone recover and be strong and healthy. And as female strength athletes, we can go take over the world.
All right.
World domination.
Hormones today, world tomorrow. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, ladies. So if you haven't already, make sure you go check out our Facebook group page, Women in Strength Athlete Resource. You can post some questions to Kristin on there, or you can talk to her about your mobility stuff, or you can ask me questions about life, because that's all I'm good at.
Mary's really good at lifing.
Yo, if you want to talk some deep shit to me, I am here for you. I love deep conversations. I mean, I'm very introverted, but man, if you want to hit me with a deep topic, I am happy to deep dive with you into whatever the fuck you want to talk about. And go check out our Patreon page. So we launched our Patreon page, and this podcast we do for free. We love it. We love helping you guys. And we want to make it better for you. We want to start being able to offer you some things such as seminars, being able to do meetups, traveling places to meet you guys and to get some more resources. And one way that you guys can help us is becoming a monthly patron. So
or $1.
$1 a month.
$1.
$1 a month will get you our basic perks package, which sounds super salesy and I'm not great at this. But basically, it'll give you access to some perks that we have created for you guys if you give us $1 a month. So Patreon is just a way that instead of us bombarding you with sponsors, we have a way that you guys can have a voice in the podcast. And of course, $1 is the minimum amount, but there are other tiers which will get you other perks. And we'd love to have you on it. There's a little bit of talk that we might have like a secret podcast you could be a part of, which would be amazing depending on your level of perkage.
Also, being able to attend live interviews with our guests, like real time, get to hear us talk to them and ask them some questions.
Yes. So go check that out. It's linked in the description below. And until then, we will talk to you guys next time.
See ya.
See ya.